Welcome to the MS Dev Show, episode number 185. This week, we talk with Colin and Tej about the cool stuff Microsoft is doing in the education space, including Minecraft. And we even talk about one teacher that's teaching computers without computers.
Raygun gives you complete visibility on errors, crashes, and performance problems affecting your end users. Replicate issues in seconds rather than digging through log files or having to rely on users to report errors or crashes. Raygun gives you a window into how users are really experiencing your software applications. Check it out today at raygun.com.
This week we have Colin Birge and Tejbir Sodhan. They both work on the education engineering team in the Vancouver office in Canada. How's it going, guys?
It's going great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this. This is a pretty cool. I think this is a pretty cool topic that we can explore here.
Excellent.
Yep. So, Carl, what's going on?
I just want to remind everybody, because we've been terrible at this the last few episodes. If you want to get in touch with us and just chat with us in between episodes, you can go to slack.msdevshow.com and send yourself an invite to get to our Slack channel.
It was easy. I joined.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, there, you can talk to the man himself. And the other thing that I wanted to mention real quick is that they finally figured out how to remove our permissions from Channel 9. So we are no longer publishing videos there, which is a little unfortunate. We were able to stay on there for a while, but they've kicked off like just about everybody off of Channel 9. So fortunately, that was only a tiny percentage of our listeners and viewers. So if you really want to watch the video, you can go to YouTube. I think it's youtube.com/msdevshow. And but obviously, you can search for us. You're listening to us now, so obviously you know where we're at. So you're probably listening to us in your podcast reader, but you can find us everywhere the finer podcasts are sold. What do we have for the comment of the week, Carl?
This week, the commenter was on iTunes from Norway, Haken. He said he was listening to the last episode, and this was a little while ago, and he had his mind blown when he tried Windows Control C and made his entire Windows grayscale.
Yeah. So
yeah, that is a fun one. So yeah, we definitely had a blast with that.
Yeah. Have you guys ever seen that? Like
we have. That's brilliant.
So I've been waiting for like somebody on my team to leave their computer unlocked because I'm going to get them with this prank for sure.
A good thing most of us are remotes.
Yeah, I know. That's why there's only like 3 people that I can actually get with this. So, okay.
So if you want to get mentioned on the show like Haken, send us an email to feedback@msdevshow.com, comment on Facebook, YouTube, or Stitcher, and we really like those 5-star reviews on iTunes.
Yes, we do. Okay, so let's jump into the news. We only have one news story, and I actually wanted to cover it in our last episode, but I held it back because I know that these guys would have some good commentary on this. Do you want to talk about this story, Carl?
Yeah, so there was an educator, I believe out of Ghana in Africa, and he was teaching some computers to his class, except he didn't have a computer, and he was painstakingly drawing in color in chalk on a blackboard, like the entire Word interface, and teaching his students that way. And he had made it to, I'm going to probably get this wrong, some sort of education conference or forum. I can't
Education
remember.
Exchange. Yeah.
Education Exchange. And he had gotten a lot of praise for the work that he was doing with that. Mm-hmm. And it seems that, after he got this attention on social media, that Microsoft is committing to find a way to get some actual computers into that school's computer education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it is an awesome story. It is inspirational to us here to see how we have a number of teachers who just do the most amazing adaptations to be able to get the material over to students, regardless of what access they have to fancy equipment, to even simple equipment, to different kinds of facilities, whatever those might be. We do a lot of touring with various customers and schools throughout the world, actually. And this is a particularly excellent story, but I've seen equally amazing stuff in schools in small towns in China. We have a teacher there who somehow managed to get an old school projector and a Surface laptop, and through that he's doing a full up technology suite of all kinds of different courses, ranging from math to Chinese to English language to everything else you can name, on a shoestring in a classroom that is basically a small wooden structure, for lack of a better term. Every time I hear about one of these stories, I'm just in awe. The amount of work that the good teachers really put into making this happen for their students is just amazing.
Yeah. So I don't know if I mentioned on the show before, but I used to live in a rural area, and my one of my sons, he was getting bullied, so we ended up putting him into a private school, and this was like a tiny school, like the entire population was less than 100. And I had asked about volunteering and helping out with their computer classes, and they're like, well, we don't have a computer lab. Like, we have a room for it, but like they had some old computers and they were just completely garbage. And what was surprising to me, and I'm not like trying to talk up like what I did, but what I was actually able to do, and again, I don't think it was really because of me, but it was because of the low cost of some of these machines. I was actually able to buy the HP laptops. They were like, I think they were either 11 inch or 30 or 13 inch. There was an education discount on them, and I got them for, I think, $180 a piece. And fortunately, in my case, I was able to get Microsoft to also pitch in, basically matching, my donation to the school. But I was able to I basically purchased 5 of them, and it was right around $1,000. And then Microsoft pitched in the other ones and bought 10 computers. And it actually made like such a huge difference, because they went from like not having computer classes to being able to have computer classes. So I guess I would encourage everybody too, to like reach out, find out what the situation is at your school and how they're teaching the students, and see if there's something like that you can do, or if you could have people pull that in. I mean, even if you could get, in my case, if we could have gotten 20 people to pitch in just a few bucks, we could have bought a computer lab. Like, it doesn't even require one person to do this. So, check into it, and that can make such a substantial difference.
We've been doing amazing work with a number of our OEM partners in bringing a whole bunch of inexpensive machines, low-cost machines, to the education market. So HP is a great example. Yep. They have a couple of models now that are really working in there. I believe Lenovo does as well.
Yep.
It's really an excellent way of being able to put something into a classroom situation, get students access to something that they just would not have had access to before.
And these were actually signature PCs. So, I mean, there was no extra software on there whatsoever. They actually had SSD drives. They were very acceptable machines for less than $200. I was amazed. Yep. And they were touchscreens. And, it's funny because I had to go in there. They weren't used to having all these computers. So I went in and I basically told them, like, here are the rules that you need to put into place, like have everybody wash their hands because they were laptops. And then it just took off from there. Like I didn't have to do anything else. They came up with all the rules, and they, I went in there and watched. It was just amazing how just getting it started. And then they just took over and did an amazing job. And then to watch what those kids were able to create out of that, because they were, they had computers at home and they were very computer literate. So if you can just put a little bit more fuel on that fire, it was just amazing, the difference. So yeah, this guy, I mean, the links that he went through, to painstakingly draw everything out, definitely not the best way to learn, but you got to deal with what you have. So yeah, I really commend him for what he did there. So very cool. Okay, so let's get to the main topic, which is really it's a good segue from that news story, which is education. And I guess we'll start with, I don't know who wants to go first, but let's talk about like, what is your role at Microsoft?
So I'll start.
Fine.
This is Colin Birge, and I am a program manager here at the Education Engineering Group, which is actually located all over the place, but I happen to be, along with Tejbir, in Vancouver, Canada. We are very focused on the education customer, on teachers and students, and we're very focused on making learning outcomes better for students. So making it easier for students to learn something, whatever the teacher might want them to learn. That's actually a little unusual at Microsoft in the sense that a number of our product groups are organized around products. So you have a product team that works on Word. You have a product team that works on Xbox. You have a team that works on games, perhaps. We actually look at lots of them, and we work with a whole bunch of those teams, including a couple I just mentioned, to work out what would their products look like in the classroom, and how do we get from, hey, that's a kind of cool piece of tech, to, hey, this is actually helping enable a student to learn. How do we make sure that students are really picking up something from using our technology? And I'll let Tejbir talk a little bit more about the developer side of that.
Hey, so my name is Tej. I'm a software engineer here on the education team in Vancouver. What drew me towards education and education team here in Vancouver was something specifically like what Colin just mentioned, learning outcomes. Something that I've always been interested in. I've volunteered at my high school. After graduating, I'm still involved there. And to learn that to be honest, I didn't even know there was an education team at Microsoft before I joined.
I didn't know until like a week ago when you guys reached out. So
hey, and now he's even wearing the T-shirt for education.
I am.
So.
I am.
cool.
Yeah, I super support this. I think it's to have a focus on learning outcomes and gaining positivity for students and for helping teachers is something that it's not only like technically interesting, it's also personally interesting. It's cool to work on something you're actually personally interested in. I'm glad to have found that. And then I went back to my high school and before I joined, and it was interesting because we're talking about technology in the classroom. And when I was there, we were using overhead projectors, but we also were using laptops. Thankfully, we did have a computer lab and we had projectors. But now when I go back, there's racks and racks of Chromebooks, and they're all using these devices to for all the students to be using technology in the classroom. And it was cool to be able to, get their feedback and learn what they like about using technology in the classroom and how it helps, and be able to actually make a difference in my job. So, yeah.
Very cool stuff.
So what are you guys working on specifically right now?
So our team is working on something called education resources. So education resources, it's still in preview, is describe it as a catalog of learning objects. So learning objects would be something that any teacher could use to bring a learning outcome for their students. And education resources is this catalog of 300,000 plus objects that teachers can search and filter by specific types. Would be assessments, articles, assignments, and it would increase their productivity. So they're pre-created, whereas a teacher before, maybe they would have to go home and think about their lesson plans and have to think of things from scratch. Now they could come and they could search education resources and look for specific worksheets, say about polynomial algebra if they're teaching math. And we do have, and they're integrated first party with other Microsoft applications. I think this might be a good time for Colin to talk about Forms and OneNote in Class Notebook.
Sure. So as we're thinking about what these learning objects are, they can be a whole bunch of different things. They might be a lesson plan. They might be an assessment. They might be some material that you want the student to go and work with. And so if you think about that, really they fall into a couple of categories. One might be for the teacher to review themselves, but most often we want to share those with the student, and we want to do that in ways that are part of the normal environment. So we're not trying to invent yet another app that teachers have to keep track of. They've got tons of those already. So one of the things that we provide in a classroom environment, we Microsoft provide, is that we have a couple of ways of distributing content within the classroom. One is Microsoft Teams, our brand new one. This is a platform that teachers can use to quickly create classes, share stuff with classes, share assignments with classes. We have a OneNote class notebook, which allows for some rich scenarios for how teachers can organize content and allow students to collaborate. We have a app that I do a bunch of work with called Microsoft Forms, which is an assessment app. Forms is all about being able to create quizzes or other kinds of assessments that both can look at, has the student actually gained the knowledge that we wanted, but also can be used to do a check-in of the social emotional health of the class. So you can imagine doing a quick couple of questions that says, hey, how are you feeling about this material on the next test? Right? We see those as well. Teachers can adapt their teaching style, can adapt the material that they want to bring forward based on what they're seeing within their classroom results. For all of that, we have this notion of education resources, being able to take this pre-existing material based on what the teacher is seeing within the class and supplement their own curriculum with this material. They can do that, again, in Teams, in OneNote, in Forms. We have the ability to bring all of this to where the teachers and the students are, the technology that they're already using.
Okay, so something like Teams, you mentioned before that obviously the developers that are working on Teams are very product focused on Teams. So are you able to, sort of pilot Teams in education and then say like, oh man, the students are creating these back channels and then they're kind of screwing around in class or something. And like, are you able to then go back to engineering and sort of affect change in Teams, giving them that feedback? Like, hey, Teams would be a massive hit in education if you could make these changes.
We do some of that.
Okay.
We spend a lot of time engaging with schools to see, okay, how does Teams work in the classroom? We also have some partnerships directly with Teams where we are bringing specific features for the classroom into Teams as a whole. For example, we have the notion of what's called assignments within Teams, which is an add-on that you can bring to your Teams environment.
Mm-hmm.
Assignments allows you to, as it sounds like, assign a resource or assign an assignment or assign an assessment to a particular student or to all the students in your class. That might have points associated with it. It might have multiple files or multiple pieces of curricula associated with it. It probably has a due date. It probably has some way to collect all of the material and bring it back to the teacher so that the teacher can review everything, give feedback, give grades where appropriate. All of this is done within Teams, and most of it is done using the normal Teams UX. What we provide as through the partnership with Teams is that workflow that allows for the teacher to create the assignment, assign it out, and then review everything that comes back in. So it's really it's a partnership. It really is. It's Team's product. It's by any stretch what they do, but it's about looking at, okay, what's that extra thing that we can bring forward to have this really work well in a classroom situation.
That's pretty cool. And this is a little bit of a tangent. I didn't give you a heads up on this question, but have you worked with any virtual schools?
Any virtual schools?
Yeah.
So you're thinking of online schools?
Yeah, where it's online school. Yeah.
We have. So there are, as you can imagine, there's a wide variety of what we call schools. I'm going to use the term in the broadest possible sense. We work with everybody from the very traditional brick and mortar students show up in a classroom. There's a teacher in the front. We call that the sage on a stage model. The sage standing on the stage, giving their wisdom to the students. We also have a number of scenarios where we're working with people with what are called flipped classrooms. Those are scenarios where you can imagine you give the students a bunch of, let's say, videos of lectures on a particular topic. And the students go off and watch those videos in their own time, on their own, at their own pace. And then they come back to the classroom, and in the classroom, there's no lecture. Like, the assumption is the students already know everything that was in that background material. And so it's immediately about the active participation, the active work on synthesizing and demonstrating knowledge of whatever the material was. Okay. We do those kind of scenarios. We see some strictly online, where we have, in the higher ed space, there's famously a place called Open University in the UK that has no classrooms, has no buildings. It is 100% online. We see a number of those kinds of institutions as well. All of them we're working with on the notion of, how does Office 365, how do the Microsoft products work in their individual environments for what they're trying to accomplish. Not trying to recreate their environment for them. That's not what we're here for. It really is about understanding how are they set up and what do they see as their goals, and how do we empower them for that. Cool.
And then what about, go ahead, Carl.
What are the technical challenges in working in education?
Oh, I'm going to let Tej talk to this one.
Yeah, well, there's quite a few. I mean, we can go back to the news story we just talked about. One of the biggest technical challenges is not having technology.
Right.
Right. How you can create all this software, but putting these applications in front of teachers and students is quite the challenge, right? And making, like Colin mentioned, making these devices more affordable and being able to put these applications in front of students is I guess a technical challenge and a logistical challenge, but it's tough. And to jump on top of that, bigger challenges is this ecosystem. This idea of ecosystem is students don't always all have the same hardware. You could go to a class and one student will have an Android phone, another student will have an iPhone, one student have an iPad, and then the school also will provide 10 HP laptops, for example. And how do you deal with identity where you have 15 students all come in, use these devices, they leave, the next 15 students come in, and how are you able to associate their identity with the work they're completing? So those are some of the tough challenges. And going back to having access to technology is just infrastructure in general. Colin and I and some of our colleagues went to a school here went for a school visit to visit a classroom and see how they use Class Notebook and how they're able to use technology in the classroom. And one of the biggest problems was the Wi-Fi is not always the strongest in the school. And so there'll be issues with signing in and syncing. So these are the type of technological challenges that we're always facing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I could see the identity thing that you were talking about. I could see that being very challenging in the classroom. Cause my kids already struggle with that. It's funny. They actually get access to like 10 different systems. And a lot of times, I mean, they just get like dummy passwords that are like the same as their student ID. And, I mean, that has to be a nightmare to manage that.
not only that, like we have to distinguish between teachers and students. So you don't want students to be able to view what teachers can view,
Right.
and being able to manage the whole classroom. It should be just specific for the teachers, not the students.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, too, you were talking about the 10 different systems that you have in a classroom. Those 10 different systems are probably 10 different systems. They're probably not all from one provider.
Nope.
They're probably not from 2 or 3 providers. They may well be from 10 different ones.
Yep.
And so we spend more of our time than any other Microsoft group I've been involved with, really thinking about interoperability. How do we work with the systems that are already in place? How do we work with the learning management systems and the student information systems and the classroom management systems that we might have? Any of which we can't predict in any classroom which ones they might have. So it becomes imperative to be thinking about, okay, how do we work with open standards? How do we collaborate with partners wherever possible? How do we smooth these out so that that poor teacher who is trying to stand at the front of the class and teach something in front of 20 potentially quite bored sixth graders, make sure that she can control the class and get everybody up and running as quickly as humanly possible.
Mm-hmm. And then I keep hearing about, Minecraft and how important Minecraft is for education. So how is Minecraft actually used in the classroom?
So Minecraft is of course, a game, and everybody's used to it from that angle. Most students who approach Minecraft have seen Minecraft before as a game. This is a little different when we're using it in the classroom. Minecraft for Education is about, again, delivering those learning outcomes. It's not just about, hey, let's go build something cool or see if we can dig a hole that we can go bury our teacher in.
Mm-hmm.
Although that does happen occasionally. Minecraft really is about being able to deliver lessons of a particular kind. So you might imagine there is a set of chemistry lessons that can be delivered within Minecraft. There's a set of science lessons that can be delivered in Minecraft. There's a set of technology lessons about programming, basic programming and code that can be delivered within Minecraft. In all of those, the notion is that the student is walking through a set of call them challenges of one form or another, or educational pieces where they get to actually try some of the concepts that they're learning about. And in some cases, we can do that with things that would really be hard to represent in a physical environment. So, for example, in the chemistry experiments, how much more fun is it to actually show how electrons are attached within an atom, right, than it is to actually build the atom in Minecraft? There are a lot of possibilities for using that kind of a virtual environment to really bring forward a number of learning scenarios that it's hard or impossible to do in a how shall I say, real life classroom. How's that?
That's when you realize the ratio of empty space in an atom to the actual substance.
Exactly.
I don't know if you've ever seen that, but if you were to mimic that in Minecraft, I think the what is it? The electrons would be like at the edge of the map compared to the nucleus of one block there.
They are.
Yeah,
they are, and there are exercises that demonstrate that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Don't wait for users to report problems. Raygun gives you complete visibility on errors, crashes, and performance problems affecting your end users. Replicate issues in seconds rather than digging through log files or having to rely on users to report errors or crashes. Raygun gives you a window into how users are really experiencing your software applications, supports all major programming languages and platforms, and integrates with your current development workflow tools too. There's a free 14-day trial, and it takes minutes to implement, so start resolving issues in your application and check it out today at raygun.com. So far, we've talked a lot about like the technical offerings that Microsoft has in this space. But as a Microsoft employee, I'm aware of this program called Teals, and it's a way to help volunteer and get more education, more instructor education in high schools. To bring computer science literacy about. Does your team have anything to do with that Teals program?
We love the Teals program. Teals was created by an engineer at Microsoft and primarily funded originally through Microsoft Philanthropy, which is a separate area of the organization that works hard on thinking about where can we make the right investments in the nonprofit world to build some good things within the world at large. Teals has been enormously successful. We've seen a number of different environments out there. We've heard great feedback from teachers and students about that. We ourselves are not directly empowering Teals because they've got their own funding model. They've got their own way of working with the world. That said, we spend a lot of time making sure that we're making connections between Teals and the schools that we're talking to, where we think there can be some mutual benefits between the two, or we think Teals can really bring something forward there. It's a great program. We love it.
Very cool. So where do you think Microsoft has a big advantage in the classroom?
I think Microsoft's advantage in the classroom is in two aspects. One is that for a lot of classrooms, we're already there. So there is a great number of classrooms that are out there that already have access to tools like Office 365 or Windows machines. We have who have access to the Office Online services. And so many of the things that we talk to schools about is about leveraging what they already have. For example, OneNote is free for teachers and students.
Mm-hmm.
Free download, free to use online, works great. Every time I say that at a conference, I get a bunch of, wait, really? It's free? Are you sure? What's the catch?
Yeah.
There's got to be a licensing model.
Well, and actually
no.
Office 365, like at the school that I donated the computer lab to, and I was talking to them about that, and they actually had a server that was running their email. I'm like, why don't you just move that all over to Office 365? And they ended up provisioning an account for everybody. And it took us like 2 days to get the free license approved and rolled out to everybody. And then every student had an email address. They were able to collaborate over email. They were able to use all the Office apps. I mean, that was incredible for free.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The other big advantage that we bring is that we really are laser focused on the notion of the learning outcomes. We've been talking about that all show, but it's worth taking a moment here. I was recently at a conference called BETS, which is held every year in London. It's a big educational technology conference. And one of the things
Is that what it stands for?
British Educational Technology.
Because you said
something.
that, and then you're like, it's a big educational technology. And I was like, it was too perfect.
Sorry, it's a large educational technology conference.
Okay.
That doesn't stand for anything anymore. It's just BETS. That's what it is.
It's not let's.
It's not let's. It is BETS.
Got it.
At BET this year, one of the big themes that I saw was there were a lot of providers who were providing robots. Students, here are your parts. Go build a robot. And it was cool. It was awesome. And so I went to several of them and I said, so what are the students learning out of this? Well, they're building a robot. That's cool. Could they build another robot? Maybe if they had the right parts. Well, are they learning anything besides how to build a robot? What does building the robot actually teach them?
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but it's a robot. It's cool. It looks cool. And we should not ignore the cool factor. That is absolutely important. But what we really want at the end of the day is to make sure that any of the lessons, any of the cool things that the students are doing are actually teaching something. The technology that we bring to a classroom should be about enabling the students to learn, and specifically enabling the students to learn something that can be measured. This is terribly important to teachers, and it's one of our primary focuses. We don't want to bring technology just because it looks awesome. We want our technology to look awesome, but we want it to actually teach to that outcome. And we think that's one of the real differentiators that we bring to the table.
Mm-hmm. We need more drones in schools.
I have seen some drones.
After the robot, drones, for sure.
I will mention a third thing since I'm on my soapbox here, which is that we are very, very heavily emphasizing the notion of the inclusive classroom. What I mean by that is we see in all the classrooms we visit a number of students who might have dyslexia or dysgraphia, who might have vision impairments, who might have any number of other issues with particular kinds of learning. And we spend a lot of time thinking about how to help all the students anywhere on within that matrix, if you will, of learners. We have a tool that we're very proud of called Immersive Reader, which allows for students who are having difficulties for whatever reason with reading or just concentrating on their reading to be able to look at any text and see it in ways that are going to make it more meaningful for them. We might show them one line at a time. We might show them syllables, syllable on syllable on syllable. We might show them a view that allows them to highlight specific nouns or verbs. Just depending on what the student needs, we can do a lot to adapt any of what they're reading to the viewpoint that is going to be the most useful for them.
That's super cool.
Yeah. And to go back to Colin's point about measurable, the Immersive Reader is really good about that, where you can measure your improvement in reading. For a lot of those students who were having some trouble, they were able to immediately see improvement, where they would be reading, say, 25 words per minute. After time with the Immersive Reader, they were able to move up to 50 words a minute, 55 words per minute, where they were at their baseline or exceeding expectations for their age group.
Not just their age group, but for the individual expectations. So we've run studies where we had there was one student in particular, I remember this vividly, who was reading at about 10 words per minute. And the goal was to get them above 15. And that was the goal for the year. The student was having that level of difficulty with reading. And after a couple of months of using Immersive Reader, student was at 55 words per minute. So the gains that we see are just enormous. And those are the kinds of stories that keep us coming back to work in the morning. That's what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
So, I look at what we're talking about here, and my sister is in education, and she constantly tells me how much Google is a big competitor in this space, and that there's tons of other just people chipping away at these kinds of initiatives. What really do you think sets Microsoft apart?
What I think sets Microsoft apart from a Google or from any of our other competitors is really two things. One is that we have, unlike a number of the smaller point solutions that are out there, we have the ability to serve as a little bit of a classroom platform. And what I mean by that is the ability to empower the teacher within their classroom to be able to share many different kinds of content or many different kinds of tools, in a number of cases, within the classroom. Google is an obvious competitor in that space. They can do this too. They've had low-cost devices out there for some time. The pieces that we are bringing forward really to try and challenge them in that space are around the inclusivity, around the ability to do things like ink input. Somebody mentioned touch devices. We are working on expanding our ability for students to be able to use ink and pens to work on exercises or answer assessments as we go. We're looking at further ability to integrate more closely with the other tools that are out there. Tej talked earlier about the notion of the ecosystem, the fact that everyone in the classroom is using 10 different systems. And we really see the importance of making sure that we're not just building something that works in a silo, but building something that really is going to work with and integrate smoothly with all of the other tools that are out there. Mm-hmm. And then finally, and again, and I cannot emphasize this enough, the importance of not just repurposing a tool to repurpose a tool, but repurposing a tool to make learning better within that classroom. Mm-hmm. That is an absolute goal of ours.
Yeah. And this is probably like way down on that list, but I know that one of the things too is that, you know, the software from Microsoft is like what powers the world. Like everybody knows that like 90% of businesses run on Excel. And, you know, so obviously getting early access to those types of tools, I think is pretty critical. And anytime I see my son, like he's had some Google Docs experience, but then they also have him working in the Office apps. And he actually prefers the Office apps. And, you know, I keep telling him like everything you learn in there, I'm like, this will be useful in the business world whenever you get into the business world, because this is what the majority of business runs on.
And this is true at when I was in high school. This is what we were using was Microsoft Word for any type of essays we were writing, Microsoft PowerPoint for all of our presentations, Excel, etc. And then when we saw the Google alternatives, it was like, this is Microsoft Excel for Google, or this is Google Docs is like the Word of Google, right?
Right.
That was kind of the understanding, and you get this I guess this literacy of how to use these products, and it does help a lot in the real world.
Yeah. So I learned Excel on DOS, by the way, which is pretty, I think it was it Microsoft Works? And then they had the spreadsheet in there, and I actually learned it on DOS. And I remember it was on 286 machines. And then I ended up like getting to the maximum spreadsheet size. And then I had to go into the 386 computer lab so that the spreadsheet could actually fit into memory.
I will age myself. My first spreadsheet was Lotus 123, and it was on a CPM machine.
Oh, wow.
You know, I look at where Excel has gone in the days since then, and I am forever astonished by just how far the evolution has been.
Yeah, it's so funny though. Like I'm sort of tainted though, because anytime if I have like a big spreadsheet, I always feel like, okay, am I reaching the limits? But it's like, no, you're not. There's no limits
really
anymore. Because I've opened some spreadsheets now, and I'm like, whoa. I mean, they really are like running. I mean, people are running entire businesses on Excel, which is pretty wild. So, you know, at the schools that like my kids are in, and, you know, obviously I got at the last school that my kids were in, I really got plugged in because they were a really small school, and they're just like, please help us in any way you can. But like for people that are listening, like what can our listeners do to help out their schools? How do they get them, you know, the schools to know, like even just know that, you know, they can get so much free stuff. And how do we get them plugged into everything that Microsoft has to offer? Is there like just a page they can go to that will explain everything, or how do they do that?
So there's a couple of resources that are available for them. One is called Microsoft.com/education. Mm-hmm. That's a resource that points out a whole bunch of the tools that we've been talking about today, and some other things that are available for teachers to use. We also confusingly have education.microsoft.com, which should be the same site but isn't, which is the Microsoft Educator Community. That's a good one to point teachers to. Okay. It is designed for teachers to be able to interact with other teachers, learn about what's working, how did we make this work in the classroom, on and so forth. All that said, the number one thing that I would recommend to any parent is go talk to your teacher, find out what they've got in the classroom now and what they are using now. We find ourselves surprised every time we go to a school for what they have and potentially what they don't have. The number one competitor that we have right now is pen and ink.
Mhm.
Pen and ink is by far the majority of the scenarios that we still see in the classroom, and there are reasons for that. But there are so many things that the technology can empower, and so many ways to learn that the technology can empower, that we really see that something as simple as your story of saying, hey, there's no lab here at all. Maybe we should go look at getting a couple of low-cost machines to get people to work with. That may well be the solution in some cases. In some cases, they'll have a couple of machines and then say, okay, well, what are you using? What are you using it for? What are the gaps that you're finding? And then there may well be things that we can provide to either supplement the curricula, to save teachers time, to really allow for teachers to get better work done within the classroom and get them to actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is teaching, as opposed to debugging whatever went wrong with the login this time.
Okay. And then what about homeschoolers? Do they have access to any of this free stuff?
So the homeschoolers would have access to some of the material that's on places like the educator community, the education.microsoft.com community. That's free and open to the public. They will have access to things like OneNote that are generally available for customers at large.
Yeah.
We have some other things that are available through various kinds of licensing programs. I am not the expert on that one. That should come from one of our sales team, but happy to help a listener and get caught up with the people they need to catch up with. As far as the curriculum goes, as far as the resources go, that I would say is a great opportunity to go through that education community and to really see what's working for teachers and to be able to leverage the best of that within your own homeschooling environment.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you guys want to talk about that we haven't quite covered today?
Tej, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the fun of partnering with some of the other teams we have here?
Yeah, I could talk about that. I guess from a technical perspective, it's interesting working on a product where the end user experience is not from directly in our product. So education resources is a web app that would be embedded in, say, OneNote or Microsoft Forms or Teams. So it's interesting to go work in a different team's code base, work in different tech stack, different process, and having to do all that kind of coordination. I guess that's another technical challenge, but at the same time, I guess it's the fun part of really understanding what the end user experience is and how those things are built, and then we can further it helps give us more empathy for the other teams and be able to develop in their platforms. And then on the other side, on the back end, there's a lot of technical challenges in retrieving all these resources. So we work with the team in Paris that sends or ingests all these resources into a pipeline for us to use. And as you can imagine, with 300,000 plus resources, there's always some types of issues. And that's another, I guess, technical challenge. So I would say just environment of working with so many different platforms, so many different teams, like Colin mentioned, this ecosystem and having to think about so many things at once is fun. It's great because there's so many people to reach out to, and it's very satisfying and rewarding. But it comes with its set of difficulties and challenges.
Yeah, it sounds like you have your work cut out for you.
Yeah. But again, like coming back to those learning outcomes, it feels like you're working on something that's actually helping and maybe changing the world, right? So
very cool. Very cool. Okay. Any final comments or we move on?
The only final comment I will throw in is that I really encourage all of your listeners, if they haven't visited one of the schools that's nearby, even if have kids, don't have kids, but they're not the right age range, go visit your local school. And just ask if you can talk to one of the teachers for a little while. You will find a remarkable world of immensely hardworking, adaptive people with a set of challenges that are unique in my experience. Everything from funding to time management to changing curriculum to goals to you name it. Thinking about as technical people how we can make their lives easier and make students' lives better is a challenge that we don't reserve for ourselves. We think that this is one that could go really anywhere.
I want to reiterate that, like, the similar thing. Whoa, whoa, someone's excited. Yeah, similarly. Similarly to like what Colin said, I mentioned at the beginning, like I volunteered at my high school, and teachers are incredibly receptive to all ranges of people, to previous students, to current students, to other educators, other parents. So I would just want to reiterate what Colin said. More teachers are really open, or schools in general, really open to this type of feedback.
Okay, cool. Okay, so let's move on. So what do you have for the dev tip of the week, Carl?
This isn't too devy, but I know that in a lot of Slack channels, there's a little response that you can give as an animated GIF of like a parrot spinning its head back and forth, and it often like shift into a rainbow of colors. Well, if you go into a terminal and you curl parrot.live, you can actually get that animated ASCII GIF in your terminal, changing colors, bobbing its head and everything.
Yeah, I'll paste it into the to the video version of this if anybody wants to see it. It's
I'll post it in the Slack channel right after this.
There we go. Very cool, very cool. And then guys, there's a game that we play. So let's have you go first, Colin, since you're on the top in my video here. Pick a number. What numbers do I have left?
Just grab the next one, Jake.
Yeah, you're just going to get the next question. Don't pick a number. You can pick the number
Okay.
4. And you get to answer this. Would you rather, it's a kid's game, would you rather always read with one eye shut or always talk with your teeth clenched together?
Ooh. I'm going to go with the eyes shut only because if I tried to talk with my teeth together, I think I would have a jaw ache in the space of about 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So
Would you rather always read? Okay.
That's the
Exactly.
easier one. You just don't read anymore. Whereas talking, you can't stop, right?
Yeah, Mr. Education here. Just stop reading, everybody.
Hey! That was a good one. Okay, you got me. You got me.
Kids, don't listen to him.
Yeah.
Okay. Tej, let's see what we got for you. Man, I got to order these by like that might be out now. I got to find one for you. Otherwise, I'll have to reuse. Oh, no. Here's one. Here's a 2. I found a 2. Okay. Would you rather see a group of... No, I'll read it with one eye open. Here we go. Would you rather see a group of bullies teasing your best friend badly and not be able to do anything about it? That's mean. Or have them tease you, but not too badly?
Oh, that's easy. That's me. That's me.
Wait.
Wait.
What
That's me. 100%. Who came up with this question?
Yeah, what is that? Like, they should be reversed, shouldn't they? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It should be like, it should be that you're a group of bullies is lightly teasing your friend, or they're teasing you badly. Like, right? Like, man, have some,
I agree.
have some
Like, that's so
empathy,
easy.
people.
Like, I'm just chilling. Like, you tease me lightly, easy. Right?
Yeah, that's like every day for me. So, having kids. So,
I got 3 older brothers, so yeah, I know what that's.
yeah, exactly. Very cool. Okay, so Tej, where can people find you online?
You can find me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Just search my name, Tejbir Sodhan. I I don't think there's that many people with my name. So that's probably the best place to find me.
And we'll have a link in the show notes
Yeah.
so people can find you that way. And Colin, where can people find you?
LinkedIn certainly works. Also, any of the education sites that we pointed to, most of them have feedback of one form or another. So more than happy to look at that. I also have a Twitter feed, although I don't often use it for Microsoft stuff. It is WOS.
Oh, okay, very cool. And then Carl, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Carl Schweitzer.
You can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/ytechie. So guys, thank you so much for coming on here and talking about such an interesting topic that we don't really cover too much. But I think you guys have a really cool job, and I think that that this is just really cool work that you guys are doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you for
having me.
having us. Much appreciated.